There are secrets that kill in silence, and Helen Santoro was carrying one that was about to destroy everything. On that March afternoon, she walked into the law office of Mendez and Associates in downtown Manhattan, holding a yellowed envelope.
I'm glad
the paper was stained by time, 28 years to be exact. Inside it,
It feels
a
better
truth. Her hands trembled as she spoke, her voice breaking. Mr. Mendez, I need you to read this, but first, I need to tell you how it all began. The attorney adjusted his glasses and looked at this 60-year-old woman. Elegant, well-dressed, but there was something broken in her eyes. And then, Helen began to tell her story. Summer 1989. Helen was 32 years old, teaching English literature at a prestigious prep school in Connecticut. At a wedding in the Hamptons, she met Augustus Villela, 55 years old, widower, self-made millionaire, owner of a luxury hotel chain across the East Coast, and completely, utterly in love with her. Helen, you light up this entire room. Tell me I can see you again, she smiled. There was something genuine about this man, something rare. 3 months later, they married in a small ceremony in Martha's Vineyard. But there was a problem. Augustus had 2 children from his first marriage, Fernando and Beatrice, and they hated Helen with a passion. Fernando was 28, corporate attorney, ambitious, cold as ice. Beatrice was 25, Park Avenue socialite, cruel, calculating. To them, Helen was nothing but a gold digger after their father's fortune. You won't see a penny of that money. My father is blind, but we're not. Helen tried everything to win them over. She cooked family dinners, asked about their lives, offered genuine affection, but they treated her like trash. Don't fool yourself, Helen, you're just a maid with a wedding ring. Augustus didn't see it, or pretended not to, but Helen swallowed every humiliation in silence because she loved that man, truly loved him. 2 years later, Augustus got sick, pancreatic cancer, stage 4, terminal. The doctors gave him 6 months, and that's when Fernando and Beatrice showed their true colors. They abandoned their father. They invented excuses not to visit. I'm closing a deal in Hong Kong. I have a charity gala I can't miss. But the truth? They couldn't stand watching the money slip away. Meanwhile, Helen took care of Augustus day and night, changed his clothes, cleaned his wounds, held his hand during the pain crises, slept in a chair beside his bed at Mount Sinai Hospital. She didn't leave, didn't rest, didn't live. And one of those late nights, Augustus woke up. He looked at her with sunken eyes, but they were shining. Helen, you stayed. Even after everything they did to you, you stayed. I love you, Augustus. Not for your money. For you. He cried. For the first time in decades. This powerful man cried like a child. 3 days before he died, Augustus called his private attorney to the hospital room. I want to change my will, everything, completely. The attorney hesitated. Mr. Villela, this is going to cause a war. I don't care. Write it down. And Augustus dictated. I leave 70% of all my assets to my wife, Helen Santoro Villela. The remaining 30% will be divided between Fernando and Beatrice. But there is one condition. The attorney stopped writing and stared at him.
Helen.
What condition?
I love you
Augustus
so
took a
much.
deep breath. If Helen reveals a secret that only she and I know, she loses everything. And Fernando and Beatrice inherit 100%. The attorney was confused. What secret? Augustus smiled sadly. She'll know. Augustus died on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Helen was holding his hand. Fernando and Beatrice only showed up for the funeral. Designer sunglasses. No tears. 1 week later, the reading of the will at the law firm on Fifth Avenue. When the attorney read the asset distribution, Fernando exploded. This is outrageous. That woman manipulated my father when he was dying. Beatrice was pale, but her venom was more calculated. We'll contest it. We have proof she influenced a dying man. But the attorney raised his hand. There's an additional clause. Everyone went silent. If Helen Santoro reveals the secret that only she and Augustus knew,
I'm glad we could talk.
she will lose all rights to the inheritance.
Me too.
Fernando and Beatrice looked at each other. What secret? The attorney closed the document. That is not specified. The following months were pure. Hell, Fernando and Beatrice launched a brutal psychological war. They hired private investigators, spread rumors in Manhattan society, offered money to Helen's former colleagues to speak badly about her. They called her at 3 a.m. We know there's a secret, Helen, and we're going to find it. When we do, you'll lose everything. Helen began living in terror, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, trembled when the phone rang, because the secret was real and devastating. Back to the present. Helen, now 60 years old, faces Attorney Mendez in his Manhattan office. Mr. Mendez, I can't take it anymore. 28 years living in fear. 28 years carrying this. The attorney opens the yellowed envelope. Inside, a birth certificate. He reads and turns pale. Oh my God. Helen breaks down in tears. Fernando is not Augustus's biological son. When Augustus was young, his first wife had an affair. She got pregnant by her lover.
I'm glad we
But she made Augustus believe Fernando was his.
Me too.
Augustus discovered the truth years later.
Now.
He did a DNA test in secret, but he never told Fernando because he loved him anyway. When we got married, he showed me the test results and made me promise I would never reveal it because it would destroy Fernando. That's why the clause. Augustus knew Fernando and Beatrice would persecute me, and he left this choice in my hands. Either I revealed the secret and destroyed Fernando, but lost the inheritance, or I kept quiet and suffered in silence. The attorney closes his eyes. And what have you decided, Mrs. Villela? Helen takes a deep breath, wipes her tears. I'm going to renounce the inheritance. The attorney is shocked, but Mrs. Villela, we're talking about $50 million. I know, but I won't destroy a man to prove my worth. Fernando is cruel, arrogant, but he doesn't deserve to have his life shattered by a secret that's not his fault. Augustus taught me that true love doesn't demand justice. It demands mercy. I love that man. I took care of him until his last breath. And that's worth more than any fortune. Let Fernando and Beatrice keep the money. I'll keep the peace. 6 months later, Helen was living in a small rented apartment in Queens, teaching literature online to high school students. No mansion, no luxury, no wealth. But for the first time in decades, she slept in peace. One Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. She opened the door and found Fernando standing there. But this wasn't the arrogant Fernando from before. This was a 56-year-old man with red eyes, holding an envelope. Helen, I found out. I did a DNA test out of curiosity, one of those ancestry things. And I discovered that I'm not his biological son. I became obsessed, investigated everything, and I found the test my father had hidden. And then I understood the clause, the secret, everything. You could have destroyed me. You could have taken everything, but you protected me. Fernando falls to his knees and extends the envelope. This is my half of the inheritance. 25 million. It's yours. Helen looks at him and smiles with tenderness. I don't need money, Fernando, but if you want, you can come in for some coffee. Fernando lifts his face, and for the first time in his life, he cries tears of gratitude. There are inheritances that cannot be measured in dollars. Augustus left Helen something far greater than a fortune, the chance to prove that true love doesn't need revenge, and Helen left Fernando something no will could ever give. The forgiveness that heals wounds no judge can rule on, because in the end, the greatest riches are not in bank accounts. They're in the peace we carry and in the forgiveness we offer.